Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to the Lara Community Centre. It's fantastic to actually see the numbers that have actually turned out tonight, so congratulations to all of you for this important issue. My name is Councillor Anthony Aiken. I represent the local ward of Lara and the northern suburbs of Geelong, and also Deputy Mayor of the City of Greater Geelong at the present time. I was asked by Lara Care Group to actually chair tonight's meeting and assist the running of this evening. So thank you very much for that opportunity. Before we do begin, we do wish on behalf of the Lara Care Group, myself and Ella George, to acknowledge the Wadawurrung, the traditional owners of the land at which we are meeting tonight. We all do wish to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and we also acknowledge any Indigenous people that are actually in the audience tonight as well too. And I should say part of the reason why we do that is because, in fact, we are recognising over 60,000 years of continuous stewardship of the land and waterways which we live on today. I do ask anybody that wants to come down the front, there are some seats down the front. And before I formally commence tonight's meeting and give an introduction to the agenda, is there any representatives from Parks Victoria that are here? If you'd like to just acknowledge and come down the front, that would assist us as well too if there are any. So tonight's meeting actually is a follow-up meeting. Parks Victoria did graciously attend a meeting at the Lara Sporting Club earlier this year, and tonight is actually being organised by the Lara Care Group. And the Lara Care Group does wish to have the opportunity to present to the community their ambitions and beliefs about Serendip. And also importantly, they did invite Ella George, our local state member, to attend tonight as well too. So I first would like to just introduce Ella. So Ella, would you just like to directly stand up if that's okay? So Ella, thank you very much. Look, it is worthy of giving Ella a clap. Ella didn't have to attend, but she did say that this was an important issue for the community and an important issue for herself, and she did want to participate. And essentially the meeting has been brought about to actually give Ella an understanding of the general community's position about Serendip, because as I said, we have already heard from Parks Victoria at the Lara Sporting Club. Tonight is an opportunity for you as well too, as members of the community. We will receive presentations from three individuals that have different connections with Serendip, and we've introduced to you throughout tonight, and they will give a formal presentation. There are videos and there are written statements that will be made before you tonight. And at the conclusion of the presentations, there actually will be a Q&A session where you do get the opportunity to ask Ella questions directly yourself from the floor. And Ella will do her best to actually answer them. If they are technical and require follow-up, Ella certainly will follow up those questions for the community as well too. Look, I'm really proud of the numbers of people that have turned up here tonight. This is an important issue for the Lara community, and it's reflected by the number of people that are attending here. It is a cold night during spring, and that even shows the greater level of commitment that all of you have towards Serendip. Serendip certainly is a very important part of Victoria, an important part of the Geelong community. But essentially, it is the ownership and the custodianship that the Lara community has had over Serendip over the last nearly 40 years, which is why there is so much passion and commitment from this community towards the future ambitions of that facility and ensuring that the community has some engagement and participation in that process as well too. This is not a government event tonight, so it's not a City of Greater Geelong event, it is not a state government event. This is actually a community event that was put together by the Lara Care Group. So they've actually organised everything tonight and invited myself and Ella to come along and actually fulfil our responsibilities as community representatives of Lara. So please join me at the start to actually thank the Lara Care Group for actually organising tonight's meeting. So we'll move straight into it now. So the first speaker is actually Barry White, who probably doesn't need introduction to all of you, but I will introduce him. He is president of the Lara Care Group and has been a passionate advocate for Lara for all these years that he has lived here. It's not just Serendip, there are so many issues in which the Lara Care Group have actually lobbied and advocated on behalf of the community of Lara, but certainly over the last 2 to 3 years, Serendip has risen as an issue of significance to the Lara community, and the Lara Care Group has actually done a fantastic job to be an advocate for the community and representing the community voice about Serendip as well too. So with that, I'll actually ask Barry to come forward and thank him for his presentation, and we look forward to the opportunity to actually speak to Al. Barry won't be taking questions, he's actually giving us a presentation, but Al certainly will be taking questions at the end. Yeah, thank you, Barry.
Thank you very much, Anthony, and once again, welcome to everyone coming along tonight, and particularly to Ella for giving up her time to be here, because this is a very important issue for our community. I'm a bit worried with the lights out. If you're going to go to sleep, please don't stop. What I'll be talking about is to give just a brief overview of how we've got to the position that we're in today, which is rather tenuous with respect to Serendip, I must say. But I'll also be talking about the planning process that's gone on over the last 2 or 3 years. But I'll be focused, it's on the development of the Uyangs Precinct Master Plan. I mean, that's what this whole issue is about, and about Serendip's role within that. But we'll be focusing very much on Serendip because of its importance to our community. I'd like to start, if I could, with a number of videos, short videos, which are actually prepared by Parks Victoria, and I think the importance of them is that these were developed to promote Serendip. One is to do with the wildlife walk and close encounters with wildlife, which has been a key feature of Serendip. The second is about a threatened species breeding program that has been carried out at Serendip very successfully, I might say, in a number of areas. And the third is the fact that it's an all abilities access at Serendip, and that's very important too, to make sure that everybody can participate. So with that, I'd like to just run the 3 videos. They'll run consecutively, and then I'll just get on and talk a little bit about the planning process. I'll try not to bore you too much. A few slides to do with planning, but it is important that you as a community understand what has been going on and what's involved. So with that, we can have the videos please.
Welcome to Serendip Sanctuary. On behalf of Parks Victoria, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Wadawurrung people. I'm Vanessa, and I'm an education officer here at Serendip Sanctuary. Serendip is located in Lara, which is just north of Geelong. It's a unique place that features wildlife of the Western Volcanic Plains. Come along on a tour with me, and I'll show you some of these cool animals. This is what Serendip looked like 200 years ago. This whole area was covered in grasslands, and animals like potoroos and bandicoots would have hopped around this whole area. When the European settlers arrived in Australia, they farmed lots of these areas, and today not a lot of this habitat remains. Serendip is all about caring for and breeding threatened species. The Cape Barren goose was one of the first birds that was bred in captivity at Serendip, and now it's back in the wild. Another unique grassland species that lives at Serendip is the Australian bustard. They are very rare. It's estimated there's only 20 of them left in the wild. Humans have impacted on their habitat, and foxes prey upon bustards. Here at Serendip, we've got a breeding program for the bustard. Emus live in grassland areas, and they feed on grasses and insects. In autumn, the female will lay up to 15 eggs. Only the male sits on the eggs, and once the eggs hatch, only the male will care for the young up to 1.5 years of age. Despite us taking away their habitat, kangaroos are common. They can hop up to 70 k's an hour and have great jumping skills. Grasslands are an important habitat for some of our smaller animals as well. Come have a look at our bearded dragon. As you can tell, he's got some really cool features. He's got a grey colour that will blend in with its environment, so he's really well camouflaged. You can see that it's got spikes on the side of its body. When something tries to attack the bearded dragon, they stick out their spikes and they also puff up their beard, and they look quite ferocious. The tawny frogmouth is the star of this enclosure. It's not an owl, it doesn't have a strong beak and strong talons. It's got a weak beak to catch moths at night time. Tawny frogmouths are masters of disguise. They sit very still in trees and they freeze and look like a branch. Another animal that camouflages really well is the bushstone curlew. When something approaches the curlew, it will sit very still on the ground and it looks just like a log. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't work with our introduced predators, cats and foxes, because they will still find the curlew using their sense of smell. In Victoria, curlews are a threatened species. That's why here at Serendip, we breed this animal to make sure it's still around in future. We are very lucky to have a spotted-tailed quoll at the sanctuary. The spotted-tailed quoll is the largest carnivore marsupial that we still have on mainland Australia. It's a close cousin to the Tasmanian devil. In Victoria, there's lots of different types of wetlands. At Serendip, you can find natural wetlands that are filled with rainwater, but there's also man-made wetlands here that have water all year round. Now, the benefit of that is when wetlands dry up in Victoria over summer, Serendip has lots and lots of bird life. This is our brolga. You can tell that it's a wetland bird by looking at its features. It's got long legs made for wading through water. And when it sees something in the water, with its long beak it will snatch it and feed on it. So it feeds on fish, yabbies, frogs and little bugs. This is the marshland bird hide, and it's a really unique spot. It's a great place to sit quietly and observe the bird life outside. We're at Serendip's Wildlife Waterhole. This waterhole features a beautiful wetland, gorgeous plants. There's white-faced herons, freckled ducks and buff-banded rails in here. Thanks to support from the local community, especially the Lions Club of Lara and the Lara branch of the Bendigo Bank, this waterhole was recently rejuvenated. Thanks for joining me on a wildlife tour at Serendip Sanctuary. These tours are normally run by passionate volunteers. Serendip's a real treasure. It's right near Geelong and Melbourne, so I hope to see you here back sometime. You can come and visit. We're open 7 days a week, or come on a guided tour every weekend over summer. The park is free to visit. For more information, please visit Parks Victoria's website.
Serendip Sanctuary is a unique place in which we conserve lots of native wildlife, including threatened species such as the eastern barred bandicoot. Hi, my name's Brandon. I'm the wildlife ranger here at Serendip Sanctuary on Wadawurrung country. Serendip Sanctuary is an important place for wetland and grassland species, an hour's drive from Melbourne. We are part of the Western Volcanic Plains, which are known for their rich soils, grassy plains and many threatened species. My role here at Serendip Sanctuary is to provide technical advice to the team in efforts to conserve some of our threatened species that we find here in Victoria. Magpie geese, Australian bustards and brolgas are just some of the threatened species that we have captive bred and created important insurance populations for at Serendip. But one of our best conservation success stories is the captive breeding of the eastern barred bandicoot. We provide a framework for these animals to breed, and eventually their offspring will be used in conservation programs where they're directly released back into the wild. The eastern barred bandicoot is a small ground-dwelling marsupial typically found within woody grassland habitat. This animal is known to be mostly an insectivore. A bandicoot living in the wild will typically live for about 3 to 4 years. The eastern barred bandicoot has been classified as extinct on mainland Australia for quite some time. We've been very fortunate in our lifetime to see that this classification has now changed to critically endangered. This has been due to the efforts of a number of organisations, including Zoos Victoria, and a lot of other strong, tireless hours put in by volunteer groups and other existing stakeholders. Serendip's involvement over the past decade has been to provide this safe space for breeding and retirement of eastern barred bandicoots. In just the past 5 years, we've been able to successfully breed around 16 individual animals, most of them being released back into the wild. Part of our role is to perform health checks on all of our animals on a monthly basis, in particular the eastern barred bandicoot. During this process, we ensure that we check their weight first and foremost. It's a really good indicator of their overall health. And we also check their teeth, their eyes, their skin, the levels of dehydration, and anything else that we deem significantly important. During this process, we're able to get really up close and personal, which is a really special experience. Victoria's grasslands and the species that rely on them, like the eastern barred bandicoot, have faced significant threats over time, such as land clearing and habitat loss. Feral animals such as foxes and cats have had a huge impact through predation on these animals. Science and geography are critical components of Parks Victoria's approach to conservation. Some of the ways that we ensure that we deliver in this space is by recording data and monitoring individual animals in our outdoor holding areas. We also control introduced predators to protect the eastern barred bandicoot, and we work on restoring and enhancing existing habitat here at the sanctuary to provide a better space for these animals to live. It's really important that we protect and conserve our threatened species. So many species are interconnected and really provide purpose for other species that we find in this ecosystem. Bandicoots are considered landscape engineers and are able to really enhance the values of a given habitat. So without something as critical as the eastern barred bandicoot, we may find ourselves in a position where other species begin to face the same threats and pressures that this one does. As we know, the climate is changing and as severe storms and megafires become more common, sanctuaries like Serendip will play an important role as natural refuges. Since European settlement, Victoria has lost over 99% of its native grasslands, so sanctuaries are crucial for the survival of our grassland species. Serendip not only plays a role as a wildlife refuge, it's also a park with strong community involvement. Involving the community is really important because we need everyone to understand what issues our native grasslands face. We encourage people to visit Serendip and learn about our special ecosystems and share this appreciation with others by joining one of our school excursions or volunteering to help us with animal husbandry or land management. You can even sign up to our Discovery Guides programs to teach other visitors about the importance of the park. I strongly encourage students to get out there and understand what opportunity is available in your own local community. Try and understand what threatened species you may have in your own backyard and really get involved.
Education is the key to understanding and preserving our unique native animals. This sanctuary is enlightening, it's free, and it's ideal for visitors with all abilities. It's also a pretty relaxing day out. If you need a reminder of how unique our Australian birds and animals are, you've come to the right place. I'm Ryan and I'm with Soraya here at Serendip Sanctuary in Lara. This is an accessible wildlife and education park, so let's say g'day to some of our Aussie friends. Serendip Sanctuary is in Lara, 60 kilometres west of Melbourne. And before we start to explore, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this is filmed, the Wadawurrung, and pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Soraya and I are here to check out the Wildlife Walk. It's just one of the 5 All Abilities walks here at Serendip. There's parking for disabled visitors near a large picnic area, which is complete with tables and barbecues, and there's a unisex accessible toilet here too. This conservation and education centre sits on 250 hectares and houses more than 100 native animals. Some are endangered and bred here for conservation. We head past the classroom and into the first enclosure. This open area is home to emus, Cape Barren geese and reptiles, and there's some kangaroos here that kept an eye on us as we made our way round the path. Further around, we pass through a set of gates. Now these aren't as heavy as they might look. We've come into the marshland area. This is where brolgas, ibis, cockatoos, coots and ducks and other species call home or come to visit. The path here is wide, it's flat gravel and the railing offers a clear view. There's a bird observation hide with viewing areas that have been designed for everyone and it provides a good view from a wheelchair. We pass the bird hides and make our way down a ramp that leads to the Padamelon walkthrough. This endangered shy creature, which looks a little bit like a small wallaby, made a surprise cameo appearance. We continue through the double doors that open up into the aviaries. The curlews here, who always look as though they're frowning, stare at us wide-eyed as they feed on crickets and insects. We're surrounded by native birds of all descriptions, and they're not bothered as they go about their business. We watch them and they watch us right back. The aviary has a hard dirt path and there's a small step into the second section. The doors and gates at Serendip aren't heavy to push and they offer easy access from one enclosure to the next. The Australian bustards have a large space to accommodate and they too enjoy their lunch of crickets. We follow the path back to the picnic area for a lunch of our own. At one of the many picnic tables, we have something to eat and reflect on the characters we've met. For the protection and conservation of animals, it's important to learn about them and see them in their environment. And that's exactly what Serendip Sanctuary does. It's an ideal way to engage kids and remind adults of the unique animals that we have in this country. Come down to Serendip Sanctuary, it's completely free and the centre caters for visitors of all abilities.
Okay, well, the point about that is that is what Serendip has been in the past, and I should point out that many, if not most, of the wildlife that you saw there, the native birds and animals, have now been removed, they've gone. And I think it's really destroyed the very essence of what the Serendip has had to offer, and that's something we want to talk about tonight. I'll just run through as quickly as I can the planning process so you can understand how we've got to the position that we are today. In 2019, they started, Park Victoria started the Uyangs Precinct Master Planning process with a consultation process, invited stakeholders and the general public to provide views and so forth and submissions. There was then in 2020 a review of the submissions that were made and public feedback on the first draft. The thing that was clear in the first draft was that there was virtually no reference at all in the plan to wildlife at Serendip. As a consequence, a petition was raised in 2020 and there was something like 90,000 respondents to that petition, the majority of which opposed the first draft and what it had to offer. And 90% of the submitters wanted the breeding program, threatened breeding program in particular, continued because of the importance that it played in the past. In 2021, the consultants that prepared the report also provided a report on the first draft and on the submissions that have been presented. And I think this is an important comment. This was in the consultation report, it's not our commentary, this is in the report itself. Removing the breeding programs and opportunities to see wildlife up close will have a negative impact on Serendip Sanctuary. It is a hidden gem. There are very few places to go that are accessible for people. The who have disabilities and see nature as well as an opportunity to see Australian wildlife. Serendip has a magical feel. As I say, that's an independent review from the consultants, but I think it reflected very much the views that were coming back from the public and other stakeholders. After the first consultation report, a second draft was prepared on the basis of further public consultation. But the important thing was that there was no public review on the second draft. First we heard of the report after the first draft was the 2021 Master Plan, which had been submitted and approved by the Parks Victoria Board and the Minister. And in 2022, the final Master Plan was released. And two of the key points as far as we were concerned with Serendip was the reference to the poor state of the sanctuary, was the reference to the poor state of the sanctuary, the infrastructure and facilities, and there was still no mention of wildlife in the final plan. Probably the turnaround came, I guess, just prior to the election, late last year, and Ella's with us tonight, and we're thankful for the role she played in this, but she made a commitment on behalf of the Labor government prior to the election in October 2022 that if successful, the government would commit 11.2 million to the You Yangs Precinct Master Plan. Now we know that it wasn't just about Serendip, it was the You Yangs Precinct, but we certainly expected Serendip to be a major part of that. And we thought, even more importantly, the fact that the announcement was made at Serendip suggested that funding would be available to upgrade the infrastructure. In 2022, Parks Victoria, having released the Master Plan, ignored a fundamental requirement, which was the establishment of a stakeholder reference group, basically a group to review priorities and actions before implementation of any of the elements of the plan. But what we then discovered was most of the wildlife, or much of the wildlife, had been secretly removed, unannounced. And that was done before the review work was actually in place. And at the same time, dismantling of the enclosures started to take place. And of course, as far as we were concerned, the argument was that the removal of the displayed wildlife removed the need for infrastructure. And as it turned out, that was the view that was confirmed in the business case. The business case was actually prepared in 2020. It was part of the master plan, but we tried several times to get access to it, and we were denied that access until we submitted a Freedom of Information request in 2023. And two of the key points that came out in that particular process was the very poor state of repair of Serendip Sanctuary. That was identified within the business case. Poor walks, poor signage, the information centre not having been manned for quite a number of years, and so forth. And the conclusion that was drawn by the consultants was basically the fact that the expectation of visitors through appropriate experiences and offerings would be threatened as a response to the poor state of the sanctuary, and it would fail as a key attraction within regional Victoria and in the context of a more competitive international visitor industry, global visitor industry. And this was extremely important because a lot of the value of Serendip was in fact attracting international visitors. And they noted that without investment to upgrade the ageing infrastructure and maintain quality, the precinct would fail to deliver a signature and authentic experience. So basically the business case continued to identify that there had been a move to remove a lot of the substance of Serendip Sanctuary. And that was highlighted with the fact that under the Freedom of Information and the business case, that Parks Victoria had actually provided directions to the consultants to reconfigure the sanctuary to become an open wildlife park, remove excess fencing and enclosures, and remove the captive breeding areas, the tunnels, the exhibits, the aviary, existing hides and fencing, and even a ludicrous recommendation to remove the boundary fence, 6 kilometres of boundary fence. So in essence, the business case indicated that Parks Victoria had failed to maintain Serendip, and that was borne out by the consultant's review. This in turn provided the excuse to remove the wildlife exhibits, and the motivation, we believe, to this was just to reduce cost of maintaining the facilities. That was highlighted in the business case, where it was indicated that by doing what was just indicated would reduce costs and staff effort. There was no need to maintain enclosures, reduce time spent on animal husbandry, reduce feeding costs, and more time for rangers to engage in other visitor engagement, whatever that might be. Earlier this year, in May 2023, the stakeholder reference group had its first meeting, and it was then declared by the convener of the group that the management of captive animals would not be part of Parks Victoria's role or its expertise, and we would agree with that. They didn't have the expertise, nor were they particularly interested in maintaining captive animals or enclosed animals as part of what was offered at Serendip. But the point that we would make is the decision made by the board to remove captive animals, in their terms, was made before the master planning process even started back in 2020. So wildlife viewing would remain a I'm in trouble with this. One more. Yeah. Management of captive animals would not be part of their role, and the decision, as I say, was made to remove the animals before the master planning process actually began. But wildlife viewing would still be a core part of the visitor experience, but there will be a change to how people view wildlife, which meant what we don't know. It was never really explained. The stakeholder reference group then went on to say that Parks Victoria would agree to continue a focus on supporting threatened species breeding programs, but in partnership. But there was no mention of priority for partnerships, who, what, where this might occur. And it was not acknowledged that many of the native animals, birds and animals that have been removed, were threatened or critically endangered. So these were actually the very wildlife that should have been protected, should have been kept by Serendip. The next slide just indicates, if you walk around the wildlife walk today, you'll still see some of these signs, which indicate clearly that these were threatened species that have been removed. In some cases they are very rare on an international basis, but they have been removed without any knowledge. So I guess where this brings us to is that the essence of Serendip is its wildlife. What has happened to the essence has been destroyed by a unilateral decision by Parks Victoria to remove many of the rare and vulnerable native birds and animals that were central to its role and the main attraction for visitors, families, schools and tourists. And I think this is the main message as far as we're concerned to our is that we do want to see the wildlife walk and aviary and wildlife display reinstated and upgraded. That the threatened species breeding program should continue, it should be increased, and there is a need to find a suitable partner with the ability and the expertise to help bring them back. I'd now like to introduce Mike Helman, who is a former head ranger at Serendip, who probably knows more about Serendip Sanctuary and its history than anybody else.
Good evening, everyone. Serendipity, the unexpected discovery of something wonderful. That's how Serendip got its name. It was once unique and wonderful, and there was no other facility like it in Australia. It's no longer serendipitous, but it could be again. When I first visited Serendip Wildlife Research Station in 1985, I was confused, and I felt like I was seeing something that was so different and yet so wonderful. I only had a passing interest at that time in wildlife, and yet I had an immediate feeling of wow. I went to Serendip in 1989 to undertake an 18-month redevelopment project. I love going to work at Serendip so much that after completing stage 1, I stayed and managed it for a further 20 years and continued to develop it. I needed assistance with the design of facilities and native animal habitat as I had limited knowledge of animal and their behaviours. I sought advice from experts including noted author and environmentalist Graham Busy, who had developed Coolab wetlands and written many books on the range of subjects, Peter Courtney, curator of native animals at Melbourne Zoo, and Don White, a local resident, who was the game management officer. Don was the person who established Serendip after it was purchased by the Fisheries and Wildlife Department in 1959. Don transformed the land from a dry, overgrazed sheep farm by establishing habitat, large animal enclosures and facilities, and transformed the ephemeral wetlands systems at Serendip by putting in a bore pump and creating levee banks and islands. Over the years, the wet and dry land habitats that were created attracted over 160 species of animal, which was an amazing achievement by Don and his team. Don White established the very successful captive breeding programs at Serendip for the endangered and threatened species of brogget, bustard, magpie and Cape barren geese. Don built very large enclosures to display native animals, a large aviary for wet and dry land fauna, and created habitat that met the respective species' needs. This encouraged the species to breed by providing safe, predator-proof enclosures with varied habitats and appropriate diets. Don was able to do what zoos in Australia had difficulty doing or couldn't do because he had the space to set up the very large natural enclosures with the right configuration that enabled them to live, breed and raise their young in a safe and essentially predator-free environment. My brief at Serendip in 1989 was to 1. Construct wildlife walks past wet and dry land habitats and through enclosures where visitors could view wildlife in natural habitats without disturbing the wildlife and without difficulty to the visitor. To develop an environmental education program that met education department curriculum and TAFE and university needs. We have installed comprehensive interactive interpretations throughout the sanctuary that excites and educates the range of visitors, and we continue to breed brogget and bustard and other species as opportunities arose. Using experts' advice that I mentioned previously, we built display ponds and wildlife walk, the North Arm Walk, Wider Walk. All of the walks were designed to ensure that free-range animals were never threatened by visitor movements and could just move away a little distance to where they felt comfortable and were never surrounded by visitors. One-way walk, one-way back. We constructed a range of wetlands with high-quality bird hides overlooking each visitor node. Serendip's captive breeding programs were so successful that during the late 70s and 80s, magpie geese and Cape barren geese had been bred up in large numbers to be self-sufficient and are allowed to fly free from Serendip. Lara residents often see the Cape barren geese around Lara and the surrounding wetlands, and in times of drought when the Western District wetlands are dry, magpie geese return to Serendip in their hundreds because instinct tells them to bore water and food at Serendip will sustain them. Brogget breeding was also a success story, and by 1992, Serendip, through artificial insemination, had around 60 brogget living on the sanctuary. Over the next couple of years, 28 brogget were released in various parts of Western Victoria. It was great that Don White was able to come back and see the completion of the brogget breeding program that he started. Other rare species were also bred over the years, including freckled, musk, and bluebill duck, and the eastern barred bandage, which were on the video before. Serendip was able to display and maintain 35 different species. So in enclosures, safe, 35 different species each day that were looked after. There were large enclosures and aviaries, and they far exceeded the welfare requirements of the Victorian Wildlife Act. A point that Parks Victoria, in part of their, going off script now, part of their thing was to say that one of the reasons they got rid of them was the enclosures were too small or didn't meet the Wildlife Act. We met them by somewhere between 500 and 5,000% bigger than what's required. Each species was fed the particular diets they required. They all had mates to breed and raise their young with. The enclosures and aviaries were all constructed with species safety being paramount to prevent predators from entering and killing wildlife. As you saw on the other video, the wildlife tracks were established, this is back in 1989-90, were all established to meet all abilities Australian standards of gradients of 1 in 15, and the doorways to the buildings and facilities were all 1,050 millimetres wide at least to ensure easy access for wheelchairs and people with disabilities. Infill slots were constructed in the bird hides to allow wheelchairs to slide into the infills and enable a person in the wheelchair to get up close to the viewing slots. All the wetlands were created to meet the range of species that Serendip attracted. They were essentially all given 5-star habitat for native animals, because when I take my wife away, I've got to provide 5-star habitat for her. There are many other works undertaken over time, including planting of grasslands, a frog pond, bush art on the ground and in the trees to teach kids to look into the trees and not at the trees to see the camouflaged animals that they might have up there. The camera was installed on the bird watching tower, and the kids were able to go into a room underneath with a controller and zoom in and around Serendip into the wetlands and beyond, up to the earnest. That's something that again is an interactive interpretation to excite them and get them interested. An Aboriginal camp was constructed featuring humpies, canoe and fire pit. The site was complemented by a woven fish trap and a map of Victoria depicting all the mobs and their names together with a description of movement and lifestyle. The curriculum program-based education program was another of Serendip's successes and one I'm most proud about. Serendip with our own rangers delivered our education programs, that's with rangers, just our rangers, 4 of us, delivered our education programs to 16,000 students and our best patronage year. Wilson's Promontory with 2 trained teachers delivered to about 8,000 students per year, and Dandenong Ranges National Park with a trained teacher delivered to 3,500. Most of the programs were primarily based on displayed animals and their habitats because students were guaranteed to view them up close and be generally excited by what they were seeing. The education program left long and lasting messages with a fair percentage of students. Serendip had a classroom, purpose-built ponding site with microscopes and an interactive whiteboard to display aquatic and terrestrial invertebrates. Rangers engaged with the kids at all levels and in many different ways on a school visit and generally excited them. What was unique was that Lara Primary School would bring a class of students to Serendip for a week at a time, and the students loved it, the teachers loved it, and the rangers loved it. A Lara student visiting Serendip in prep and leaving primary school in year 6 would have spent at least 7 weeks at Serendip during their primary school education. How do you need a classroom in an animal sanctuary? It's worth noting that classes under Marcia O'Brien, which is here tonight, I saw her before, her tutelage produced many award-winning DVDs with many based on the displayed animals. Nearly finished. To wrap up, Serendip was a unique Australian native wildlife experience, and Serendip without displayed animals is just like a walk in any other park or bush. Serendip's environmental education program without displayed animals is diminished to a point that students won't be excited and our students will not learn about the lives of native animals. Parks Victoria removed the native animals by stealth and refused to answer most of the questions I and other community members asked. Parks Victoria's disgraceful lack of maintenance of the sanctuary over the last 7 years and the deceit that Barry spoke about before that is now evident with the release of the Freedom of Information business case, which clearly shows what a sham the master plan and new community consultation process was, with the decision to remove animals on display being made before the master plan process commenced. I am left with the view that Serendip is just another asset that Parks Victoria is managing to failure. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Roger Smith, the Director of the Kinder Walkabout Tours, to provide a brief overview on the important role that Serendip has played in tourism in our region. And I can vouch for the fact that Roger booked and his Kinder Walkabout tours brought thousands of international visitors to Serendip over the 20 years I was there. Thank you.
G'day everybody, good to be here. Fun and games mucking around with this thing. Anyone want to come up and do it for me? Thank you very much, by the way, for Z Audio Visuals for your support and other assistance. It's been done at a very cheap rate, and we thank you very much for your support and to the community as well. I'm just looking up something while I'm doing this. Isn't it funny, your mobile phone becomes the most important thing in your life these days? What am I looking up? Stone, that's right, that's what I'm looking up. All right, that's me. Actually, I'm down here as well. This is going to be interesting. Let's see what happens. I just wanted to give people a chance to listen to a bird that you may not listen, you may never hear again, unless you go up to Northern Australia. For those of you who live here, part of your life, and if you're very old, you may have heard that bird. You'll never hear it again here, unless you wouldn't have heard it unless you went to Serendip. But if we don't continue to do what we're doing, we'll never hear it again. I wanted you to hear it because it's an amazing sound. I'll just do it again, why not? Let's have another go. Now the reason I put that slide up there is that's kakadu. And you might think, why's Roger done that? It's got nothing to do with Serendip, but it has. In the bottom right-hand corner of that slide, you'll see that Tourism Australia sees that as a signature experience, going to Kakadu. There's another place over in Western Australia near Ningaloo, or it is at Ningaloo. That's a whale shark, and you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen that it's one of Tourism Australia's signature experience. This is an internationally acclaimed experience. We at Echidna Walkabout turned another place into an international experience. Can anyone guess what the name of the place is that became an internationally acclaimed experience? Do you want to have a guess? Serendip. There you go. And it was. Now, I didn't have time to put a cross against the sign at the bottom of the screen there, but it shouldn't be there anymore because we had to leave because Parks Victoria wasn't interested in supporting wildlife tour operators, as Barry was talking about and as Michael's talked about. They weren't interested in helping us. It started in 2018 and it's finally come to the point where many of the wildlife that's Serendip is no longer there. It's important to understand who you're listening to. My name's Roger Smith. I've had most of my life has been involved in conservation of wildlife in one way or another. I work for the Australian Conservation Foundation, and you can see the things that I had to do there, dealing with the whole of Southeast and the Southwest Pacific. It was an enormous job. I had to leave there because it was such a demanding job. I'll never forget the day I left, but it was pretty much working for 15 hours a day, almost non-stop, to try and conserve our wildlife. I then was very lucky to meet an amazing woman who's here tonight. and we started a business. She's the co-owner, but Janine's here tonight, and we started a business called A Kid and Walkabout. That business won the World Conservation Travel the World, Wildlife Conservation Tourism Award in 2014. I've been guiding wildlife tours as a result of that for 30 plus years. And we were the founding members of Australian Wildlife Journeys. You may not have heard of that, but many, many people overseas have, because it's one of the main organisations that promotes wildlife tourism in Australia. This is one of the pages out of their website. You can see Australian Wildlife Journeys there, and you can see there's many of us distributed across the country. We perform the signature wildlife tourism side of what Tourism Australia promotes around the world. You will notice that there is no marker next to Melbourne on the left-hand side of Melbourne anymore, because we don't operate here anymore. We still will continue to run tours here, but they're the tours that we have to run because they were pre-booked up to 2 years ago. That's what happens in international tourism. Now, the business case that Barry was talking about, which was hidden from us, and I mean you as well, since late 2019 up into 2020, it was hidden from you. We were told we couldn't have it, and yet in the end it was given to us just recently this year. But it's stated quite clearly that nature tourism is one of the fastest growing tourism sectors internationally, and Australia's natural environment and wildlife consistently is cited as the most memorable experience visitors have during their stay in this country. Can you imagine, if you want to go to Africa, what do you want to see? A lion? A giraffe? If you come to Australia, you want to see kangaroo, a koala, other things. That's what you come here for. What is conservation travel? We've been working in conservation travel since we began. It's about giving back. How many of you here, when you travel, want to give back? You want to do something that helps the communities that you're in. This has become the new norm in travel in the world. It needs to be authentic, game-changing experiential activities, which includes understanding wildlife, hands-on conservation experiences, and longer stays. Now, any of you here that own accommodation here, I know there is a few of you here, that do own accommodation, there is nothing better than someone staying overnight to increase your income. Wildlife helps that happen. I'm not saying that this is the only thing that's important, because conservation of wildlife is more important than that. But if someone is going to go to Serendip, say, to do a behind-the-scenes tour of Serendip, to find out more about our wildlife, and they then have the opportunity to come back the next day and do something about it, they will stay overnight. And that quadruples the income that you get into the community. We had 25 people working for us when we were up until 2019, and COVID came, of course, but the most debilitating thing was the fact that Serendip and Parks Victoria wasn't going to help us into the future. And because people booked 2 years in advance from other countries, we had to make the very difficult decision to say no, we're not going to do this anymore because we can't get guarantees about what people will do. All travel trends are heading towards conservation travel. Everything shows that. Removing Serendip's wildlife breeding programs, display protected wildlife, and Research Association denies the reality of conservation travel and misses a unique opportunity for funding the sanctuary via lucrative behind-the-scenes activities. A person coming to Serendip and just looking at a boulder behind a fence or whatever is not going to get much of a thrill out of it. I, for one, would much rather see wildlife in the wild, but I'm aware of the fact that everywhere I've been in the world, there are animals that are disappearing and need to be kept in captivity so they can be bred and so the things that they live with don't kill them. So if you go behind the scenes and are taken there by someone who knows what they're talking about, you're going to pay a lot of money for it, and that money goes back into the community. So one of our main themes, and this is one of Janine's brilliant ideas, was we should help nature while we're enjoying it. That is our catch cry. That's what conservation travel is all about. Now, contrary to the modern demand that people are wanting, the master plan proposes themed, socially engineered offerings that are naive, unsophisticated and backward. This is an outdated paradigm that travellers are increasingly avoiding. A sensory garden at Serendip is what's being proposed. That sensory garden basically is not needed. It might be a nice idea, but the whole of Serendip is a sensory garden. I've taken people into the backwoods of Serendip and they've said to me, are we in the outback? Are we in the outback? And here we are, less than a kilometre from the main centre of Lara. Just think about it, you've all been there. You know what it feels like. Just imagine what an international visitor feels like when they come here. Are we in the outback? An hour from Melbourne and 20 minutes from Geelong and about 5 minutes from the centre of Lara. So what we did as part of the master plan, we put together some ideas. Now, this document that you're looking at now is the front page of the document. If I tried to show it all to you, you'd be here for the next 2 hours, so I'm just going to show you a few excerpts out of it. It's basically about a tourism gateway that we proposed on the basis of conservation travel. First of all, I want to talk to you about the revenue that's created by tourism. 152 billion, it's the 4th largest export earner in Australia. The Uyangs region will succeed if the state government commits serious funding to Parks Victoria that enables significant infrastructure upgrades to Serendip and the Uyangs. Just so you know, and Barry didn't tell you this, but the business case that we finally got under freedom of information, it proposed at least 55 million to get partway towards solving the problems with Serendip and the Uyangs. 11 million is around 20% of that, and it's meant to be for both places, the Uyangs and Serendip. It's a unique travel destination. There's very few places in the world where you can do this. As I mentioned earlier on, you're close to 2 cities, you're close to 2 international airports, and you're close to 2 gateway towns, Lara and the river. Both of those places are important. It had so much potential. This document that I'm talking about was given to John Aaron, the previous member for this electorate. He looked at it in a meeting, and I don't know whether he ever looked at it again. I hope he did. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was a nice man, but I think that one of the problems he had, and many people who are in Lara, is that he couldn't make it happen. Now, why that is, who knows? One of the things we suggested was the gateway idea, that everybody who came through Lara heading either westward or eastward along the Great Southern Touring Route, which is a recognised touring route all around the world, would pass through Lara and stop here for at least one night, if not 2. Can you imagine what that would do for this community? It would bring in millions and millions of dollars to you, to your children, to their children's children, and so on. That was our proposal. Coming or going, stay united to in the Uyangs region gateway. And those organisations you can see there are major organisations that could have got involved in that. So that's where I'm going to finish that. But I just wanted to finish on this note. Serendip is a win-win place. We're looking towards the future. I tried to present a future scenario, that is, Echidna Walkabout tried to present a future scenario to the state government through its local member. And we're doing that again tonight to you, Ella. I'm not looking at you because I've got other things to do at the moment, but I hope and I know you'll be listening to this. But I just wanted to say this, Serendip's wildlife was protected, bred and often released. It had to be captive to protect it. Don't be dissuaded by this idea that because something's in captivity, it's in a difficult situation. It is. I don't want to be captive. I'd much rather be wild. I'd much rather see wild animals. But as a person who's been involved in conservation all my life, and I can give you one example, wild dogs in Africa are disappearing rapidly because people hate them. They're one of the greatest predators on earth. I've been to a wild dog sanctuary where they're breeding them so they can put them back in the wild. And part of that, like it is here at Serendip and in Lara, is helping the local community to become involved in breeding those animals so they can be released in the future. So, I'm just about finished. Thank you for giving me a bit of extra time here. I don't know whether I've asked more or not. I just want you to listen to this, just so. Yeah, there you go. I'm not going to be able to get this up in time, but that's the Brolga. It was once rare on the Western Plains and it's recovering due to Serendip. It's important to understand this. They've been removed from Serendip apart from one lonely bird that's still there. And it's a tough thing to come to terms with. I look at that bird every time I go into Serendip, and I don't like to see it there. I think part of the reason it's still there, and that's it, as it disappears into the horizon. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you've all helped. I helped you to understand a little bit about Serendip tonight and what wildlife is.
Look, please continue applause for all three speakers because they're actually members of the community. I think they've done a fantastic job. And just a little bit of housekeeping. If you do need to go to the toilet, please just go to the back and it's to our right. And if the people that are standing would like to take a seat, there are seats. Please just come forward and take some seats so you don't have to stand. The part of this evening now is an opportunity for Lara George, our local state member, to actually answer questions and also make some comments and statements as well too. Look, please remember that in fact we had no funding for any master plan at all, and Lara did do a very good job to actually lobby that, and the Lara Care Group does want me to acknowledge that. The reality is the master plan has got concerns for the Lara community and the speakers that you've heard tonight as well too. But Lara did an exceptional job in a very tight financial environment to actually get funding support for the unions in Serendip. And it is important that the Lara Care Group did want that to be acknowledged in front of everybody tonight as well too. So thank you. So what we will do now is we actually have got Ryan with a mic, and Ryan's offside. I do apologise. There's two mics. And we will ask Lara to come forward first to actually make, if she stays in, can start answering questions, but we will give you an opportunity to ask questions of Lara as well too. Because it's such a large group, I do ask you not to go into lengthy statements because we do want to give as many people an opportunity to be able to ask questions. So if I do find that you are exceeding the courtesy of everybody else, so please respect as the chair. I will actually ask you to sit down, and we will give someone else an opportunity because we do want to give as many people, because tonight essentially is an opportunity to be speaking to Lara directly and give Lara an opportunity to respond to you as well too. And we do want you to have that opportunity to have that engagement in this environment as well too. So I'll pass that to Lara now. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd also like we live in a spectacular part of the world, and I want to give my thanks to the Wadawurrung people for their many thousands of years of care for this beautiful country, and to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future. Thank you to Anthony for that introduction and for being a great host this evening. And thank you so much to Barry, Mike and Roger for your contributions tonight. It's been really great to hear, I've heard it many times before from you about some of the history of Serendip and some of your own involvement and your own stories about Serendip. But I think it was really great for everybody here tonight, how special Serendip is to you, and that was an excellent overview of the different ways in which you've been involved in Serendip over the years, so thank you for that. I think tonight is a really remarkable example of the community's passion for Serendip. Serendip is a really special place for the Lara community, and one thing that I think is really special and something we should treasure is how important Serendip is to the community. I think local residents in years past have had a lot of pride in Serendip. They felt some very strong connections to Serendip and almost felt a bit of ownership, and it's more than just a park or a garden or a sanctuary for residents of Lara. It is so much more. It's something that contributes to your kids' education. It's something that really enriches the fabric of your lives. And tonight is another great example of how important the Lara community values, how much the Lara community values Serendip by the fact that so many people have come along and attended tonight. Over the past 18 months, really, when I was a candidate and since being elected in November, I've heard from many people, probably some of you in this room before, through both other community forums I've been a part of, or just conversations on the street when I've been door knocking out in Lara, and also through the recent emails that I've been receiving that Barry and the team have been getting the community behind. So I've heard from a lot of people about how important Serendip is, and I just want you to know that I hear how important it is, and I hear your passion for Serendip, and I think together we can do a lot of great work in really bringing back Serendip, not to what it was, but something even better, and that's something I would really like to work with all of you on. So, as we all know, so just one thing as well, I know it says on the agenda, I'm going to talk to you a bit about my vision for Serendip, but I really don't see it as being my vision, I see it as being a community vision, and that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to be a part of tonight, and I've been a part of forums before, and I'm very happy to come along to forums in the future, but my door is always open, so if you have a question tonight, please ask it. I'll stick around afterwards as well if you want to come up and have a chat, but also just feel free to get in touch anytime if you ever want to have a conversation about Serendip. So as you all know, last year I did deliver an $11 million election commitment to Serendip, and I think, I know we've spoken about the funding amount, and Roger, you really did a great job of outlining that $11 million is only a component of what is needed for Serendip. Personally, I'd like to see that as the start of the funding for a much longer project that will go for many, many years. And that $11 million commitment, I think, really demonstrates the value that the state government places on Serendip and the youth gangs. $11 million is not nothing. By comparison, a school that I made an election commitment for received $7.5 million. So, and another school that got an election commitment was only a $2 million election commitment, which is still a lot of money and still a fantastic commitment. But I do really want to stress that $11 million is a significant amount of funding for a project, particularly in the environment portfolio space. And this $11 million commitment was fully funded in this year's state budget. So the money's there, it's all been allocated, and that money is already flowing through to Parks Victoria, who are responsible for delivering the project. It's spread over 4 years. The funding is spread over 4 years. It's important that the funding is spread out because I think we'd be setting Parks Victoria up to fail if all the funding came through in year one and we didn't, and there was a lot of pressure to deliver all the projects. It's really important that there is enough time for Parks Victoria to do planning, to continue working with the community and stage the projects over 4 years. Well, what I really want to talk to you tonight about is the opportunities that this funding and this commitment to Serendip and the community groundswell really offers us. We now have that funding locked in, and this is a priority project for Parks Victoria, and I think that's a great place to be considering where we were, say, 12 months ago, 24 months ago. The Serendip experience may be different in the future to what it has been in the past, but that doesn't mean it can't be an incredible experience. And to me, this project is really about making that experience better. Just today, we had a great announcement out at Serendip Sanctuary. Essentially it's a $45,000 commitment from the private sector towards the new sensory garden. So this is the first partnership between Parks Victoria and another organisation. So thanks to some generosity from CDC Victoria, who are one of Victoria's major bus companies. They've previously partnered with Parks Victoria on a similar program, and they've made a very generous $45,000 commitment. So I do want to talk about some of those opportunities, and I'd love to have some questions if you want to explore these in more detail later on. I think the first opportunity that we have is to create a habitat that attracts free roaming wildlife and opportunities to improve viewing. What do I mean by that? I mean things like cleaning up Serendip so that it is a nice, comfortable place that birds actually want to fly into, improving the water systems and the water qualities. If you've been to Serendip lately, you might see the pond at the front near the visitor centre. It's pretty stagnant, it's pretty gross. I'm not a bird, but if I was, I probably wouldn't want to spend much time in there. So really looking at improving water quality across Serendip, I think is going to be incredibly important. Other opportunities are things like improvements to the walking trails around, looking at putting some vegetation around the walking trails that will attract wildlife to come, and planting plants that birds and animals want to eat. There's opportunities for new hides to facilitate viewing, including all ability access that we've spoken about tonight. Viewing areas can be managed better to have water and shade and grass to encourage the wildlife to stay in those viewing areas rather than wandering off. A new deck in the wetland area for the wetland walk for enhanced viewing. And we've spoken a little bit about tonight, and I think it might have been in your presentation, Barry, about some of the facilities and the current infrastructure at Serendip, but ensuring that we do keep those hides that are in place, keeping the predator-proof areas, keeping that perimeter fence that offer that sanctuary experience for animals. I think the other key opportunity that I really do want to talk about is the opportunity for threatened breeding programs, because to me that is incredibly important, and I think there is a great opportunity for partnerships with organisations like Zoos Victoria, like Mount Rockwell on captive breeding of endangered species. I know that this has not been taking place at Serendip recently, but that's something that I do think that the Parks Victoria team are really interested in and committed to doing. They're having conversations as we speak with Zoos Victoria, and we've got a great partner in the local area in Mount Rockwell who have worked with Serendip previously, so I really do think that there's great opportunities to bring back breeding programs to Serendip. Parks Victoria have identified 2 species that might be suitable, including the fat-tailed rabbit, which is a mouse-like marsupial, and the plains wanderer, which is a small bird that's become endangered due to a loss of grassland habitat. Roger in his presentation mentioned behind-the-scenes experiences, and I think that's a fantastic idea and something that we should definitely be looking at if, when we do re-establish the breeding program. It's a fantastic experience for people to be part of, but as you correctly point out, Roger, it's a great opportunity to raise some additional funding to support the sanctuary. Another opportunity is the idea around planting more native grasses. The western grasslands in Victoria have been absolutely decimated, and part of our state government policy is to bring back as much of the western grasslands as we can, and we do have goals that we're working towards in terms of increasing the amount of western grasslands across Victoria. So I think that's a great opportunity for Serendip too. Looking at how we can work with the traditional owners, the Wadawurrung people, including Wadawurrung culture, history and language, in storytelling throughout the sanctuary. It is such a great opportunity to celebrate Wadawurrung culture. We've spoken tonight about how, and we've seen a fantastic video as well, about how accessible Serendip is. And we all know just how flat it is, but making use of that flat space and inviting people of all abilities in for a nature experience. I personally think that is a real point of difference for Serendip and something to be celebrated. I mentioned earlier the new sensory garden, and I do think this is a great opportunity for people of all abilities to have a really special experience, and another great opportunity where we can celebrate Wadawurrung culture and history and language. The other thing that I think is really important and a great opportunity is how we can work with our local schools in bringing Serendip back to be part of that school curriculum, particularly for Lara Primary. In recent weeks I've spoken with both Lara Primary and Lara Lake about what they would like to see at Serendip and what their priorities are, and getting kids back in there for more enriched education programs is absolutely top of that list. Such an incredible opportunity for learning in nature and just really understanding the world that we live in. I know as a kid I would absolutely love to have the opportunity to spend a week out at Serendip, and I can't think of a kid that wouldn't want that experience. So I do think that's going to be a really fantastic opportunity and something that should be prioritised. And with that comes upgrading the indoor and outdoor learning facilities, such as the outdoor learning facility near the pond and the indoor facility adjacent to the currently closed visitor centre. And also developing a more welcoming park entrance I think is really important, so looking at upgrading those facilities on first arrival. We all know that first impressions really count, and the last thing we want to have happen is, you know, a shoddy car park and a bleak looking sign and people thinking, oh, maybe I won't stop, I'm just going to keep driving, and not actually experiencing Serendip. So I think that's really important that we look at upgrading that first impression and that first gateway into Serendip. And finally, the one thing that I think is so important about Serendip, and in many ways underpins it, is the fact that it is free. It is free to access. It's not like a zoo where, you know, you might spend $20, $25 on a ticket, or it could cost quite a lot for a whole family to go on a day out. It is free to access. It is incredibly important that this is preserved, and that's something that I will always commit to doing as a local member of Parliament. So I guess in a nutshell, those are the opportunities that I see for Serendip, and I've spoken to many people and a lot of these things have been raised, but I'd love to hear from you as well about the opportunities that you see or that you think should be prioritised. I do really want to quickly touch on the U-Gangs, and there's one key opportunity that is really emerging in the U-Gangs, and that's the facilities around the mountain bike riding areas. On any given weekend, there are hundreds of kids from right across the region coming up to the U-Gangs for mountain biking. They are brave, it's not something I would do, but the facilities up there are really substandard. I'm definitely not brave enough to check out the toilets, but they are pretty old and gross, and would not be, not particularly friendly. So I think that's going to be really important, is looking at upgrading those facilities so that rather than kids coming up for a bike ride and then heading home straight away, it gives families an opportunity to stick around for a bit longer and spend more time up there. It's also a great opportunity for better connections in terms of the shared pathways, so walking paths and bike riding paths between the U-Gangs and Serendip, and feeding that right back into all the network of shared paths across the Geelong region and the Bay Trail. I think now I would really like to touch on some next steps, and this is something that I'd also be very happy to have a conversation with you all about when we move into questions. The stakeholder reference group that's been spoken about tonight will continue to meet for the 4 years of this project. I think it's incredibly important that this isn't a group that meets once and says something, but it's actually a group that continues to meet and continues to feed that really, really important community feedback into Parks Victoria over the whole course of this project. The group is currently providing feedback to Parks Victoria on key priorities and visions and ideas for both Serendip and U-Gangs, and Barry may have spoken to members of the community about that and how you can have your say, but if not, tonight would be a great opportunity to have that conversation, I think, Barry. And I really see my role as a member of this group, like Barry and like any other members of this group, is to ensure that the community views are taken into consideration when it comes to working through what the priority projects are, what the design and the scope of these projects look like. So my commitment to you is that I'll always feed that feedback back into Parks Victoria. I'm always happy to answer questions if you do have questions about where things are up to, and I'll certainly be encouraging Parks Victoria to do as much community consultation along the way, and that could be releasing to the community designs for, say, the new visitor centre or the upgraded visitor centre, just by way of one example. I'm also looking to arrange a forum with student leaders in Term 4. I think it can't be underestimated. Before we do move into questions, I do want to touch on another really significant local issue that I'm sure you're all well aware of, and that's the Lara Waste Energy Project that's being proposed by Prospect Hill. And I know tonight's about Serendip, so I'm going to keep my comments very brief, but while everyone is here, I just thought it would be a good opportunity to raise this important issue. And what I want to let you know is that I've heard from many residents about their concerns on this project, and I do share those concerns too. I'd be very happy to discuss this further with anybody after the forum tonight closes, or you're welcome to get in touch with me at my office. I've also got Ashley from my office here, so if I'm busy chatting to somebody and you have to duck off, feel free to grab my contact details from Ashley, or she can take a note and we can get in touch. And my office is at Corio Village, so feel free to pop by any time as well. That's it from me. I'm happy to take questions now. And Anthony, are you going to be running the mic?
We'll call for questions. So I'll take one from down the front here first. So over the gentleman in the lady.
We've just got a microphone coming to you.
And
I'm Alan Phillips, I've been a resident. I'm Alan Phillips, I've been a resident of Lara for about 18 years. I've taken my family and natural people for the Edge and other things to turn the sanctuary in groups. I get feedback all the time from. Without the animals there, it's not a sanctuary, it's not what it's supposed to be. This is what we want the native animals back there. I've grown up, my name was a ranger and new builder. I've grown up with these things. Been rescuing animals and looking after them all over the country.
all right, well, thank you. I'll take that as a statement, but what we're trying to encourage is questions so that Lara gets an opportunity, because the message certainly has been consistent tonight that without wildlife at Serendip, it is actually just a park, and that message is quite clear, and I think Lara has heard that as well too. So, gentleman there, oh, sorry, I apologise, lady.
That's okay. I know that political decision making is involved in the management of Serendip, so please return it to a thriving, vibrant sanctuary for animals and plants. My point of view is I question the need for having visitors on an informal basis in Serendip at all. Formal education, my children benefit from that wonderful primary school education program there. It was a highlight for the year. But because we're human, what less formal visiting brings with it rubbish, vandalism, feeding of animals, despite signage, despite printed material, despite warnings. Humans just sometimes don't know how to behave themselves. And in that respect, I'm questioning the need for visitors to Serendip Sanctuary, regardless of how all the other I'm happy, and just in that respect, I'm happy. I don't expect animals to pay the price from me accessing them. I'm happy to have it.
I do apologise, I will take this as a statement as opposed to a question.
I'm asking, do we need to have informal visitors in Serendip at all?
Yeah, I'm happy to quickly respond to that, and absolutely yes, Serendip should be an incredible place for everyone to visit any day of the week, completely free of charge, and I'm really committed to protecting that.
Maybe if you'd like to stand up and the mic will be brought to you.
That's all right, I don't need a mic.
Sorry,
My question is, how are people with disabilities in limited movement going to see the kangaroos, which are free roaming, unless they have someone to perhaps guide them as to where they are at that particular time of day?
Thank you, that's a great question. So I guess I reflect on my most recent experience with the wildlife walk, which was one of the walks we saw in the video, and there were kangaroos, I would say, probably, I'm not great with distances, maybe 10 metres away from me, which I think would have been very clearly visible, say from a wheelchair. But I think that's a great point around guidance, and I do understand that a lot of people with all abilities attend Serendip with somebody else who might be more physically able and might be able to spot kangaroos for them. Sorry, Roger, did you? Sorry, I just saw you standing up and I thought you might want to add something.
I just wanted to say something about that. As a person who's guided wildlife tours in Serendip for a very long time, 30 years, I've had people with disabilities in there trying to see kangaroos that are not in captivity and it's almost impossible. I just want to make another thing too. Ella, since you've been here, there has been a La Nina, which means most of the time it's been cool. I've worked in Serendip when we've had long periods of drought, and you'll go in there any time after about 9 o'clock on a hot summer's day, and you won't see kangaroos and you won't see emus because they'll be in the shade. So what you've seen since you've been here is not what we will see over the next few years. To get someone who is incapacitated out into see wild kangaroos is impossible. I'm sorry, Ella, but that's the fact.
Right, thank you. Take Ron, can you come down and pick some people down the front? Frank will take Frank first.
Thank you. My name is Frank Charlemore. I'm a local resident and a member of the Lara Care Group. Could I please see a show of hands for the benefit of our member of State Parliament? Who would like to see the animals return to Serendip and the facility upgraded to make it happen? Please hold in mind. Thank you. My question for Ella. Parks Victoria obviously has gotten this wrong. We showed you this at the sporting club, 100% show of hands. We showed you again tonight. There's nobody that doesn't want it. You ran on this as an election item.
That's right.
I know you did because I asked you. And so did some other people in this room. And that's not the position you're supporting from what we've seen. So my question to you, and everybody needs to make a very careful note of Environment Minister Ingrid Stitt's email address on the bottom left-hand corner. She is your hope for getting the animals back. Not necessarily some of the people here tonight. So I want you to know you need to write her with a heartfelt message like this gal just gave you, and that's how it's going to happen. My question to you, Ella, is will you aggressively lobby Minister Ingrid Stitt to make Parks Victoria have another look at this because they got it wrong?
Thank you, Frank. Look, as we all know, that's a decision that's been undertaken by Parks Victoria. I'm not here to represent Parks Victoria or speak on their behalf, but I do need to respect that Parks Victoria are the managing authority for Serendip Sanctuary. My role is to advocate for funding, which I have delivered $11 million, and that is going to see some really significant upgrades to Serendip Sanctuary over the next 4 years.
So, Sir, please allow us to respond to the question. Right, so we'll take another question. So, at the front here, if the lady would like to stand up if you can, and we'll bring you on.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Julie. I've just got three very quick questions that require very quick answers, but I'll just go through one to three. The video that was shown at the start, who owns the copyright for that, and is it available for purchase or for people to buy? The second question...
Do you want me to answer that one quickly?
No, I'll just go through the three questions quickly. There's a large area to the west of Serendip, which years ago, as I understand from the media, was given to the Wathaurong people, and they were going to develop a Wathaurong cultural tourism centre there. As far as I know, nothing's happened from that, and that could be something that could be further developed. And the third question that I had, sorry, I'll put it down here, just hang on a second. Who owns the video? Oh yes, the farmland north of Serendip. You were talking of walking trails between the Uyangs, or trails connecting the Uyangs and Serendip. I know from personal contact with some of the farmers in that area that their land is already under contract for future development by developers.
Okay. Thank you. I'll just quickly run through those. So based on the video, I believe it is Parks Victoria's. At least I've seen it online before, so it might be available online. It's on YouTube. Fantastic. It's on YouTube, so consider that publicly available. With regards to the land to the west being given to Wathaurong for a cultural heritage Heritage Centre. I'm not aware of. You're aware of that, correct? Mike, please.
Yes, there was a proposal at one stage for them to be given land to the west, which is the Windermere Forest Road corner. They chose after some time, and when I say some time, probably 2 years, not to go ahead with that and to concentrate on the Unions.
Thank you, Mike. I can trust you know plenty of answers to these historic questions. With regards to your third question around the farmland to the north of Serendip, I'm not aware of private sales between, say, farmers and developers. I'm not aware of that. Sorry,
I might be able to help you there, Lara, as the councillor. There are certainly no plans to turn the land north of Serendip to the Yuyangs into residential. So farmers are actually saying that it is not true. Developers certainly are speculating and trying to purchase land, but council and the state government have actually just developed it's called the Outlaw Growth Corridor, and it actually entrenches the green wedge between Melbourne and Geelong.
That I'm happy to make very clear to you all tonight is that I fully support the green wedge and the importance of keeping green, open grasslands between, I guess, Lara and the northern part of Geelong and Werribee. I think that is hugely important, and that's something I'll always advocate for.
Yeah. Please remember, if I can just get you to concentrate your questions on Serendip, because that's actually what tonight is primarily for. I'll go
Other
on this
questions
side.
not about Serendip, come see me after.
So the lady with the glasses, if you'd like to stand up and we'll bring the mic down to you.
My name is I'm like a photographer around here, I do up the Unions and Serendip as well. There was an article by Bay 93.3 from Tracy Carter. We mentioned tourism as one of tourism operators here. Their comment was, we don't necessarily want hordes more people coming to the area, but we like people spending more money.
Well, I think that would be an ideal outcome, wouldn't it?
And engaging in more activities. Now, more people fill up the accommodation, and that's just the same as far as I'm concerned. Whether you get tourism on board with this, because Lara at the moment is just the poor cousin to drive. There's nothing about Lara anywhere. And I've done my own, so I'm thankful to everybody else.
Thank you for your statement.
And Wendy, just to round it out.
Tourism on board for this.
Wendy, I'm absolutely happy to take that back to Tracy and see how we can work together to get Lara on that.
I'll be over here if you need it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just ask where all the animals went to?
Yeah.
Why did they that way?
No, I know nothing about that. I've tried to find out, and we would have no answers by parking.
I understand some sorry.
I do apologise, we had no gentleman with
Can I respond to that quickly? I understand some of the animals are at Mount Rothwell, which is another sanctuary.
There is a gentleman that's got the mic. Sir, would you like to ask your question first?
Probably won't get it back, but I'll answer. So I'm CV, I've lived in this community for about 30 years. Visit Anna's Cafe quite regularly.
It's so good.
Yes. People worry about the name of Lara, just like I call it, Lara. Gives it a bit more posh, that sort of thing. But
I haven't heard that one before.
But with Serendip, I like a lot of things I said there to bring tourism in. I think it's great. What I don't like to hear is that basically we're still handing back over money, quite a lot of it, to Lara Parks Victoria Group. Quite frankly, their stewardship on both the U-gangs and Serendip has been, well, some would say rather lacking. And also before I went up the hill, before I went up to the top of the unions.
Yeah.
Definitely wanted to go when I got to the bottom, but the toilet was shut. The other toilet over at, the Big Rock, which is excellent spot, fantastic, shut. You could, you open it, but it's all full of toilet paper, it wouldn't flush. And I'm saying Parks Victoria is supposed to be managing this. What's the experience for the people there? And I can see the animals' experience because they leave little sort of tartars and things lying around on the ground, so they're right. But the rest of us, we get arrested for that. I'm just concerned that we're handing a lot of money back to people that didn't seem to understand how to manage it properly. And what guarantee are they going to put in place that it's going to be spent properly, and who's actually auditing them?
Never was a truer word spoken.
Just a couple of things I'll add to that is that we do have a stakeholder reference group that's been set up to work with Parks Victoria on priority projects like, it might be new toilet facilities. In terms of auditing, Victorian state government departments are audited by the, I'm going to get this acronym wrong, Victorian Auditor General's Office. So there is financial auditing well and truly in place.
Yeah, we are getting close towards our original conclusion time, so I'll ask you please make a quick question because we actually want to hear Ala's response. So I'll go back up to the room. The lady, yes, with the glasses and the watch, and keep going. You go first.
I'd just like to clarify what the plan is at the moment. So is it just some gardens, wider paths, and some emus or kangaroos that haven't been? Is that how it stands at the moment?
No, I think it's important to note that the priority projects are still being worked through, and Barry, Mike and others on the stakeholder reference group along with me are looking at that right now, and we're feeding back that information about those priorities to Parks Victoria.
I just mean in the plan that was on there about what was agreed to.
Yeah. So in the master plan, there's a whole series of priority projects, and we all know that's going to cost more than $11 million in funding. We're all very well aware of that, but the $11 million is a fantastic start. So we're starting to work through prioritising different projects. It could be upgrading the toilets of the unions, like we've discussed. It could be pardon me?
It's $5 million.
Maybe so. And that's actually a really good point, because as Parks Victoria work through the priority projects, they're also working on costings, so that we can get a full sense of how much these different projects will cost and prioritise accordingly.
Let me respond to that, because I'm also a representative on the stakeholder reference group. And I must say I'm concerned about the fact that a lot of the criticisms and comments we've made have been dismissed on behalf of the community. So we're not happy to talk about the way the stakeholder reference group has been working to date. And I think there's some really important issues there. We've touched on governance. How's the money being spent? What's it going to be spent on? Is there a set agenda? And are we actually having an opportunity to influence that? Or is it, is it taken as has been presented at the present time? So it's not a happy camp. But we'll do our best on behalf of the community to keep representing the sorts of views we've expressed tonight, because Serendip, again, is such an important asset. And if you've got a good asset, you invest more in it. You don't let it just fall away. And that, unfortunately, and with greatest respect, Alan, I know we've discussed this before, to talk about the fact that you can go to Serendip and see free roaming wildlife, you're kidding yourself. I mean, anybody that's walked in the bush and you've seen free roaming wildlife, the first thing they do is bolt. They go. We went there the other week because we had a meeting there, and you can't convince me that they wouldn't fit. I mean, they were brought close to the area that we were visiting so that people could see them. But normally, if you went there without food support, you wouldn't see them. We're kidding ourselves.
Thank you.
Sarah, if you'd like to stand up, the lady that we offered to before.
Hi, I'm Christine Lara. I've been here in Lara for 24 years, and my kids helped to clean up the wallaby area, the wallaby areas, They went to Lara Primary School. They saw the frog, tiny frog mouth. I know they're not ours. But the pleasure of them going there, and I volunteered to help clean up all the branches and things. The experience was the animals and the birds. A garden. We've got plenty of gardens and urban parks around the place with grasslands. What I'm asking, are they going to remove those cages? Because they're very good fox-proof cages. To put them back would cost a lot of money. Is some of that money going to taking down those cages?
So I think you're talking about the predator-proof enclosures,
Yes.
the quite large rectangular ones.
Yeah, there was all these birds in them, and that's what the kids used to see. Busted birds, the emus, all the birds that were in those enclosures.
Yeah. So
Are they going to take those away?
So the predator-proof enclosures, which are quite the large rectangular ones, a little bit away from the wildlife walk, they are staying.
Good.
And there is, I think, in an ideal world, they'll be reused for threatened species breeding programs. There's absolutely the opportunity to do that.
Are all the holes in the fencing around the perimeter going to be fixed?
They will need to be fixed if they're going to be used. I know there's holes on
Because
fences.
kangaroos and emus are just going to jump in and out, and they get their legs caught in the wires and they die. And then the parks don't kill them. They're dependent on the ranger to come around and kill them because they're stuck in the fences. It's really disheartening seeing it degraded down to the point where they're going to make an urban park and a walkway which won't attract anyone. They come for the birds, they come for the animals, and the breeding program is fantastic.
Right, thank you. I'll take the gentleman at the back. Oh, no, it looks like we're getting the gentleman.
Sorry, anyway, well, hi Alan.
Hi.
Simple question. As an elected representative, are you going to advocate for our interests, Parks Victoria, or are you advocating for Parks Victoria's interests? I haven't yet heard you say that you are hearing us. Well, I heard you say that, but I haven't heard you say what your position is. Will you advocate for the return of the animals to Serendip?
Of course, I was advocating for the community. I'm not here representing.
That's not our...
Can we allow Lara to answer the question? Because it actually was a very short and quick question.
Yeah, so as I said, I will always advocate for the community and I'll pass on the community concerns to Parks Victoria. I'm not here representing Parks Victoria. I can't speak to their previous decision making, but you know that's for Parks Victoria to answer, and that's great questions for Parks Victoria. With regards to the...
Your position, please.
I was getting there, thank you.
You are going to say for our interests to them.
I will always tell Parks Victoria that the community, and I have told Parks Victoria many times, and I told the Minister, that the community strongly wants captive animals at Serendip. I think there's opportunities through breeding programs for that to take place. Serendip is going to look different in the future. There's going to be an increased focus on free roaming wildlife, and that's a decision that's been made by Parks Victoria by their board.
So you're saying the decision's done? There's no point us having this meeting?
No, I think there absolutely is a point in having this meeting. I absolutely do.
Can I ask the mic to be handed up the back to the gentleman right at the far corner up there, just please.
Bill, long-term resident
Hi,
of
Bill.
Lara. Thanks for coming along. I'm here specifically relating to Serendip. So I'd like to know, out of the 11 million over 4 years, what proportion is going to be going through Serendip, and out of that, I would be concerned about the window dressing items rather than the core of animals and the display of animals and the education of future generations into endangered species. So how much of the year is Serendip?
Thank you, Bill. I'm going to be honest with you, that's not a question I can answer right now because Parks Victoria are still working through the costings. So part of what Parks Victoria are doing now is there's a survey that's gone to the stakeholder reference group, which I'm sure Barry has mentioned to many of you that asks members to talk about their priorities and what they see as the important first projects. Parks Victoria, alongside this, are working through costing. So they're going to work out how much will it cost to replace the toilets at the UNs, how much will it cost to upgrade the visitor centre at Serendip Sanctuary, and all kinds of different projects. So Parks Victoria need to go and do that work, and then come back to us as a community with the different options.
Yeah, I should have scanned this quickly out at 9:15. Lara, do you wish to answer more questions?
I'm happy to stay.
And if anybody wishes to leave now, you are welcome to, because we originally advertised the meeting will go to 9:15, but Lara has agreed to answer more questions now. So those that would like to leave, you're more than welcome. And we will start, and Lara has offered to take more questions. So, Ryan, can you make a
Great, thank you.
Parks Victoria, are they responsible for us being here today, for the downturn in Serendip or not?
Parks Victoria are the managing authority for Serendip Sanctuary. Yes, it is their responsibility for the upkeep of Serendip.
So they're responsible for letting you go to the state of Sydney now?
Yes.
Why would you give them the money back if you do the same thing again?
I think what's changed is Serendip is now seen as a priority, and Serendip is now considered a priority project, and I'm really confident that the works will be delivered.
Lara, can I ask you to bring the mic down to the lady down the front here, please? Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, it's nice to see you again.
My question is quite similar to the two things. Said your vision is more or less the same as what Serendip was to us. And the $11 million has been allocated to Parks Victoria. That's not here to represent that, right? But they mentioned that they're working at distributing costs to the project, but they also have to cut the costs beforehand. And until the freedom of information application is put through. And secondly, that there's a stakeholder group as well, but they're happy to not consult the community beforehand either. So you're our only means, one of our main means of getting change as a Lara representative. What not what? You have said this. How are you going to make sure that you obviously all want Serendip as often as a former Lara primary school student? How are you going to make sure that Parks Victoria isn't just doing this to tick some boxes? Your vision, how is that going to actually come through Parks Victoria? They're not trustworthy.
So, I guess the first thing that I do want to point to is the $11 million in funding. You don't get that without advocacy, you don't get that without persistence, you don't get that without banging on ministers' doors and banging on the Premier's doors to get that funding. So I think that's the first thing that I would like to say is that, that's, I'm pretty persistent. I'm very happy to go and advocate for the community and advocate as to why something is needed, and I will point to having success in that area. But this is a really important election commitment for me. I am absolutely committed to seeing its success and seeing it delivered over the course of the next 4 years.
Parks Victoria aren't interested in the art animal. That's in their charter. And the only way that we're going to get forward on this is if we can partnership up with another reputable area like zoos.
Yeah.
We need their help.
Absolutely.
And to get back to the breeding programs, Parks look after the shrubbery.
Yeah, and Parks Victoria are already having conversations with Zoos Victoria, and I think that's something that we'll be pushing through. Barry and Mike, I hope you'll be partnering with me on this, but we'll be pushing that through the stakeholder reference group too.
It's very important.
I agree.
Thanks, Lara. We're coming towards the end, but I'll quickly ask you a question down the front. Yara?
Thanks for doing this, Ella. You said earlier that volunteers in the Lara community kind of quite rightly feel a little bit of ownership of Serendip, and I would say too right, we do. These people have volunteered an absolutely huge amount of their personal time to the upkeep of Serendip, in spite of Parks Victoria quite often, and it is public land. So we do feel ownership of it.
I think that's
because we are the owners of this land. There is a management group which is run by state government, which you're a member of, which is not doing a very good job of managing it. So I would just say, you know what, they're wrong, we're right. Please, sorry, this is not a question. Please, do better.
Look, don't apologise because there's actually been lots of statements made tonight. And the reality is Ella is listening to them. She's actually here. Ella could have chose not to come tonight, but I think she respects the significance of the issue.
And look, how tonight came about, Barry asked me if I come to a live group meeting, and I said, sure Barry, but why don't we invite the community and have this conversation? And I'm glad we did that.
We've got a lady up the back with the mic. We'll make this the second last question.
And I'm happy to see around more questions as well.
You called me a lady. Good evening, Ella. My name's Maria.
Hi,
We
Maria.
all know that the main attraction for families, visitors, school students who have come to Serendip has been the wildlife viewing experience, primarily along the wildlife walk. As we heard tonight, most of the native birds and animals have been removed. Why is this not your main concern rather than a sensory garden, particularly when Lara already has a Kevin Hoffman walk, which will provide the same experience?
I think there are a number of opportunities for Serendip. I think the sensory garden is one of them, but it's not the number one priority. I think there's lots of different priorities for Serendip and lots of different opportunities. I'm not here to say that the sensory garden is the first project that should be delivered or that it's the most important project. It is one of many projects that can be delivered through this master plan.
All right, do one more question.
Two more, because we've got a microphone here, and then to you, sir. You're next.
Lionel, can you pass the mic to the gentleman standing, please?
I won't need the mic.
My name is Kaz. I work for Parks Victoria. I work for Tourism Victoria. I know for a fact how Parks Victoria has always made Serendip the second-class citizen in this arrangement. One of the disadvantages of funding that they have for the UGANs and the Serendip is that it will all be soaked up by Serendip, while Serendip by the UGANs, while the UGANs talks about bikes running through the park, which is great for bikes, and all the huge number of people that have come to the UGANs that talk about 10 times what it used to be, visitation. The toilets, everything like that, should have been managed years ago. The fact that they are now in the state they are, that all they're going to spend that $11 million on is going to be toilets. I can tell you that. Right? And it's all going to get soaked up by the UGANs, and Serendip will be the second-class citizen again in this. And talking about a sensory garden or all the bushes and everything like that, and the wonderful things you're talking about, what can happen down the track, you know, we had it. It's gone. How soon are the animals going to be back? You know, we're talking 4 years for this particular type of funding, and then how much more funding and how much further down the track? You know, we've lost this now, and they've deliberately done it before the 2020. And I think that is absolutely appalling. We've had the same situation. Parks Victoria
two quick,
Would you like to hold the mic up?
I think you can hear me anyway. Two quick questions, Alan. You've been banning Parks Victoria. Are they answering to your government? And you are telling us what your plans are for the future of Serendip. Why has the government brought it down to where it is now? All this meeting tonight wouldn't have been needed if it hadn't been run down.
Parks Victoria have their own board, their own CEO. Yes, they.
Sorry, answerable to your government. They don't operate independently, do they?
I don't believe they are structured as an independent authority, but they do have their own, they've got their own board, they've got their own CEO, they've got their own decision-making processes.
You're not going to give a proper answer, don't worry.
Are they still a statutory body within the Victorian government?
I'm not 100% sure, and I'd have to check that for you. But I'd be happy to come back to you on that case.
Body, not a, are they under, what is it now? Delta abuse
All right, thank you. Thank you. Alex, do you want to make any final?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Anthony. I guess the first thing I'd say is I'm very happy to stick around a bit longer if anybody did have a question that we didn't get to tonight, or if you wanted to ask a question or talk about anything that's not related to Serendip. So please come grab me or have a chat with Ashley as well. She's here too. I guess I just want to say thank you to everybody who has come out tonight and shared their views with me. I really do appreciate it. I'm hearing so much from the community about how important Serendip is and how important the animals are, and I do want you to know that I've heard that loud and clear from you, and these are views that I'll always take back to Parks Victoria and to the Minister. So I think I'll leave it there because I'm conscious we're running out of time. We've already run out of time, but thanks for having me tonight, and very happy to have a chat when we finish.
What Parks Victoria has actually done at Serendip is effectively destroyed it as an attraction. It's been so important for families, for tourism, for the school program, and it doesn't matter how you window dress it. Removing the wildlife, the way it's been done, and taking away the opportunity for kids to see our native wildlife, our birds and animals, that they'll never see in the bush. And they're unlikely to see again because a lot of those species we've been talking about tonight are close to extinction. They're going to disappear. So I'm really quite concerned that we're not really making much progress here. Parks Victoria, as far as I'm concerned, and the interchanges we've had with them, they're not going to change their position. They have a set agenda. It hasn't anything to do with wildlife. If somebody comes along and says, look, we'll look after the wildlife, it may happen. But unless Ella, as our representative, really pushes that opportunity, that we need a partnership, we need somebody who knows how to manage wildlife, husbandry, conservation, general management. Unless that happens, I'm afraid that Serendip is doomed. It's just going to be a fun park. And it's a small replica of the unions.
Thank you everyone for coming. The Lara Care Group has been fighting to protect Serendip since 2004. We kept the developers at bay by having a 200-metre buffer. I was actually working for Parks Victoria at the time, so I wasn't part of it. And kept the developers at bay with a 200-metre buffer. Then we fought off a forest station, which we didn't want disturbing the displayed animals. Well, that was really a waste of time now. So I spent 20 years there, and I know how disappointed you are. Can you imagine how I feel?
Thanks everybody for coming tonight. I'd like to thank Ella. This is not an easy thing for anybody to do, so thank you very much, Ella. I don't think this has got much to do with Ella George. I think it's got to do with the government that doesn't really appreciate wildlife and doesn't really appreciate you. I just want to quickly go back to 2018. How many years ago was that? 5 years ago? Where I heard something that knocked the living daylights out of me, and the words were from a person who worked for Parks Victoria, was we are going to have a community consultation process about the Uyanks, which we've been pushing for some time. That staff employee who is still working for Parks Victoria said, when I asked that person, I said, is the community going to be involved? And he said to me, why should it be? That's what Lara Care Group has done. We've managed to get you up there. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire process, but I will never forget that person saying that to me, because I said, you're not going to get away with it. Yes, thank you. The community needed to be involved. I just want to say this too, that we have been hoodwinked because the Parks Victoria Board, in around about late 2018 or 2019, and you can read the blog we wrote about this if you go to our website, at some point late 2018 or early 2019, before the master plan process began, which was in July, I'll never forget getting an email about it. I was thrilled to bits. I shouldn't have been, but I was. But the Parks Victoria Board had already decided that the wildlife at Serendip was going to be removed. How do we know that? Because it was in the business case they wouldn't give us until earlier this year. Just keep that in mind, guys. So that meant that me and many other people put thousands and thousands of hours, including tonight, into trying to understand what happened. We now know it was all a lie. Now, how angry does that make you? I have spent so much of my life, and so has Barry, and so has Paul Michael here, trying to understand what's going on. And now we know that it was all bulldust. Now, Ella, I thank you for coming along tonight, but I believe that politically you still have a role to play in this. You, if you wanted to, if it was politically expedient, in other words, if we, that's us, help Ella to make a change in what Parks Victoria decided in late 2018 and 2019. Do you get what I'm saying here? We've got to stand up. If we don't, this will be the last time this happens. The brokers and the bushstone to curlers, you won't hear them again. They'll be gone. It'll be finished. I've been accused of trying to do this for our business. Our business is not going to be here anymore. We've already made that decision. I'm doing this for you. Barry's doing it for you. Mike's done it for you. You're here tonight. Thank God you are, and thank you very much for you coming along as our Deputy Mayor. And I know you've done a lot about this out there too. We've got to do this together. We've got to support Ella. We've got to stand beside her, put her up on a pedestal and say, Ella, go and bloody do this. Okay? Thank you. And thank you for your questions.
Thank you, everybody. I actually counted 112 people here tonight, so it actually was a full hall. And the passion and the commitment that the community has to Serendip certainly has been communicated to Ella tonight. And the message from everybody that's attended tonight, and also the speakers, is quite clear, is that if there is an opportunity to prioritise things and how the $11 million is spent, please prioritise Serendip. And please prioritise the wildlife opportunities that actually exist in that $11 million. And that's really the clear message. And Ella has listened to that. And we have to watch with interest. But as Roger has said as well too, we have a responsibility as a community to continue to lobby for that as well too. So thank you, especially to Ella tonight, for making herself available to actually see firsthand the community's passion and commitment towards the project. And I acknowledge the Lara Care Group as well too, and our speakers tonight as well too. Please join me in all four. Thank you. If you do have a capacity to make a donation, there actually is a small tub out there to do that. The reason being is because this event was actually funded and supported by the Lara Care Group, which is a community-based organisation. So if you can make a donation, contribute towards tonight's meeting and future meetings, please do that as well.
Just a final comment.
Next week, we're having another meeting on where we've got to put forward views about what the community is looking for with Serendip. It'll be much the same as far as we're concerned with what we submitted in 2019 and 2020. So please, if you've got particular views and comments that you want to make, come through on our Facebook site, and we'll be more than happy, to talk to you, or if you want to put forward a small submission, we'll be happy to take that forward. So once again, thanks to everyone, thanks to Lara in particular, and Anthony, and the meeting.